Good morning, and on behalf of our host, Tech Cymru, and the UK Telehealthcare team, I'd like to welcome you to this first of our Go Digital Now sessions for the techs industry. When we talk about digital within techs at the moment, quite often what we're talking about is firefighting the analog to digital transformation of the UK telephone network. What we tend to miss out on is to look at what the future is as more and more services rely on a digital infrastructure. So I was really pleased today when we were approached by our members, Tech Cymru, to share some of the work they're doing to prepare for the future. One of the big advantages of digital would be enabling health, social care, and the techs industry to be able to share data and enable to make that data interoperable across various systems. And some of the work I think that Tech Cymru's done around this is very exciting and worth sharing, together with the work they're doing with industry partners as well. Their exploration of a standard telecare data set across Wales is something I think that will be of interest right across the UK and further afield in the techs industry. So today we have presentations around the work being done by Tech Cymru, but also their industry partners as well. I encourage you to raise your questions as the presentations go on through our chat. If you can ensure that your chat is set to everyone rather than just the presenters, that gives the opportunity for other delegates to see the questions as well and understand the thinking behind today's session. And if you're looking to share your thoughts on Twitter or X, please use the @sign @UK THC News, and that'll help us share that information as well. So now I'd like to hand you over to our first presenter. And our first presenter is Sarah Turvey-Barber, who's the head of business and change for telecare at Tech Cymru. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jerry. Can you see my presentation okay?
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
So, Ordar, good morning. Thank you everyone for attending the event today. I'm going to provide a whistle-stop tour of the Tech Cymru Telecare programme before I hand over to Aaron to provide an overview of the Welsh Telecare data set that received a data standard from the Welsh Information Standards Board on the 5th of February this year. So, the programme at a glance. It has three main themes, as you can see, but it's held together by the additional fourth theme of engagement, which I'm largely responsible for. And I want to start by saying that the three of us that work in the Telecare programme, myself, Aaron and Beck Simmons, have all worked across all aspects of Telecare, from service delivery and strategic and operational. And at the forefront of our minds is always how we can support local authorities and the housing association partners in Wales, and how we can work across the public, private, third and voluntary sector in a seamless and agnostic manner. And it also goes without saying, at all times we consider the end user and how they can best be supported by telecare services. Clearly, there's a need to move services over to a digital solution as soon as possible due to the analog to digital switchover by 2025. But we also believe that switching over is better due to the increase of choice and a provision of data that will allow us to make better decisions to support those end users. The provision of next generation telecare and moving services from where we've been for a long time in that reactive world to a proactive is something that, again, we regularly consider and we want to support services to be able to transform and to be able to use business intelligence. So the Discovery Report was a long overdue picture of Wales when it was completed a couple of years ago, and it outlined what is provided from a telecare perspective in the public sector. So as you can see, there are some strong reoccurring themes that came out and supported the provision of a national programme. There are also clear needs to address in terms of support around the shift to digital and the promotion and development of telecare within Wales. So the strategic theme 1 is digitalisation, and we believed that it was important to start this with supporting the 7 alarm receiving centres that operate within Wales to digitalise, and you'll see them listed on the screen.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt you, but quite a few people are saying they can't see your screen.
Well, they can't see the presentation?
Yeah. Would you mind to stop sharing and then try and share it again?
No, not at all. Cool. Is that fine now, Julia?
Yes, I've got some messages coming in saying that people can see it now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Sorry about that. So as you can see on the screen, you didn't miss a lot with the other screens actually. So sorry. As you can see on this screen that there are 7 alarm receiving centres, and they're grouped by connection size, so small, medium, and then the larger ones, the 2 at the bottom. And essentially, we wanted to work with them so they could then allow their services to then have a greater choice in equipment in terms of manufacturer, and start to consider the recording of information in a clear, concise way that includes the minimum telecare data set that Aaron will talk about more in his presentation. You will see that 4 of them are already digitally enabled. Big shout out to Caerphilly that went live this week. And in addition, Cardiff signed an agreement with Innovation on the 31st of March. So we look forward to working with them, and that figure being 5 out of the 7 being digitally live by the end of this year. Beyond digital, that's the theme number 2. And I think back to when I was a service manager, I would always talk with my team and look ahead in terms of aspiration and what could be achieved in terms of telecare provision. I know this is shared across the public sector in Wales. We are a small but mighty bunch, and we punch way above our weight in terms of how we deliver and what our aspirational goals are. And we want to be able to move those digital offers and offer those significant benefits in terms of creating consistency, business intelligence, and the creation of a common record, which Aaron will talk more about in his presentation. So strategic theme 3, next generation telecare. So we've got 3 organisations with us today that will talk about that in more depth. And I've tested a lot of smart solutions, and we continue to support the movement to next gen and remain positive about the change that this will bring. In addition to this, the programme has looked at response service provision in Wales, and it's, in all honesty, it's something of a postcode lottery, with only 9 of the 22 authorities having access to a dedicated response service for their telecare users. And we continue to raise this lack of parity and what the opportunities around this provision could be. We also have a telehealth programme that we regularly meet with to consider cross-working benefits. And lastly, we've had a PhD student working with us for a few months, started last year, to look at a mathematical modelling around proactive intervention. So strategic theme number 4 is engagement. And as I said, it runs throughout all of those other 3 themes. I've been around a very long time within the telecare world, so it made sense for me to lead on this. And we've got a really productive and supportive learning improvement network in telecare, and we continue to look and improve how we can scale learning and support each other in Wales. We know who our stakeholders are, and we forged some really mutually beneficial relationships with suppliers, some of which are here with us today. And we want to work together to understand how we can drive service forward and how we can support the workforce and that end user. I'm hugely involved in trialling equipment. I've got lots of equipment in my house at the moment, and working with local authorities in terms of developing service specifications and project implementation plans. And as I said earlier, there's always the end goal of being aspirational and looking at the art of the possible. But you'll also note for the eagle-eyed amongst you that I put realism in there, because we need to ensure that there is scalability and affordability considered throughout the move to next gen telecare. So, Dilok, thank you. Sorry about the slides issue at the start. That's it from me today. I hope I provided a quick overview of the programme. And it goes without saying that I would very much like to talk to you in the future. My details are on the screen. And I'd like to now hand over to Aaron Edwards, the Telecare Programme Manager. Thank you, Aaron.
Morning, everyone. I'll just share my screen now, bear with me. Sorry. I'll just... Can everyone see that? Go to the chat first.
No, not at the time.
Oh, sorry. Right, let me just start again. Right, sorry, I'm so Teams literate. I just forget how to do Zoom. Right, okay. Let's do this one. So, beginning. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, slideshow. Is that on there? Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Right, panic over. So the Welsh Telecare data set, and I've put in a bit around the business intelligence dashboard as well today. So yeah, we wanted to focus on the Welsh Telecare data set today. So the Welsh Telecare data set, as recently as Sarah mentioned, early February, received a data standard from the Welsh Information Standards Board. For those of you who aren't familiar with the sort of health landscape in Wales, we've got 7 health boards, actually 22 councils, and we've almost got like an 8th health board called Digital Health and Care Wales. So it's almost like in England, the equivalent would have been NHS TD or NHSX. It's now just NHS England, isn't it? But back in the day, there was a specific kind of area within NHS England that hosted things like data, digital innovation, etc. So in Wales, that sits with Digital Health and Care Wales. So they host the Welsh Information Standards Board. It's been around for 10 plus years, probably longer. And in their history, they've only ever passed through health-related data sets and data standards. So we kind of embarked on being the first non-health standard to go through that process. When you read their terms of reference, they actually do have a reach into social care. So I thought, oh, let's tap into that. And even if we just use them as sort of, you know, best practice and for them to scrutinize the data set, then that's going to be the right sort of pathway for us. So we started working on this, oh, goodness me, about 18 months ago with colleagues in Scotland, in the digital office in Scotland. So our sort of equivalent national telecare programme. And we also worked with a task force made up of Welsh Telecare Service League. So if anyone's on the call who was a member of that, thank you very much. And sort of in May, we'll be running this by the LIN, our Learning Improvement Network that Sarah chairs, to just get sort of final approval on it, really, just to sort of make sure that everyone's happy before we start to reach out to service providers in Wales to roll it out. So why we need a minimum data set? I've put in sort of a nice little paragraph at the top there that data is the lifeblood of a digitally enabled service provider. But at the moment, that's not really kind of done at national level to suit kind of our agenda and my agenda of being a national programme manager. It's all quite sporadic. I know there's some really good examples of fantastic data being captured across Wales, but again, it's going to be very localised and in some way regionalised, but most of the time it is quite local. So the reason why we wanted it is fourfold effectively. So we want to ensure standardisation. So we're able to then, you know, kind of easier draw some easier comparisons across the data across multiple sites in Wales. We also feel as well from a quality assurance perspective, just making sure that the data is right. So I know a lot of councils out there, including my old stomping ground in Cardiff, are ISO accredited. So an element of QA being built in to help support with audit would be great, and that extends into those that are quality standards framework accredited with Tech Quality, the TSA. Evaluation, so in having a standardized data set would allow you to evaluate and identify trends, etc. And then lastly, research as well. So we've got a research and evaluation arm to Tech Cymru, and we did a systematic review of sort of telecare more broadly internationally, and we arrived at the conclusion that there needed to be more research. So not a surprise, because obviously we kind of knew that going into it, but we obviously did the systematic review to kind of bottom that out and basically arrive at the conclusion of the fact that we need to do more. So we feel as though a standardized data set will help us to do that. In terms of the benefits of the data set, we see it helping services to just basically improve their service. So ensuring that service providers get a better understanding for the needs and the preferences of the users in order to enable evidence-based decision making. So just improving the service provision. So at the moment, there is a bit of a postcode lottery in terms of the service of telecare that you receive. That extends right the way from the actual overarching provision, response service, etc. But it also is quite evident with the data as well. Improved data sharing. So we talk a good game about tech being kind of an enabling piece and a building block in further integration across health, housing, third sector, social care. But you're not going to get there if you haven't got a commonality in the way in which you share and export that data. So we feel as though with NHS number being included in the data set, we're able to kind of future-proof it then. So if we are looking at joining up into more sort of primary and secondary care records, and ultimately the creation long-term, my aspiration is the creation of a national common telecare record that can be expunged across different platforms and different sectors, then this can hopefully be the first foundational block in order to achieve that. A greater understanding of telecare. So I think anyone who works in the business will understand that telecare is absolutely fantastic, best thing since sliced bread. But we are unable to really demonstrate that at kind of policy level in Welsh Gov to make the case for further investment. We try our best as a national programme, but again, most of the demonstrating the efficacy of telecare again is quite localised and quite sporadic, and it needs to be a more sort of national sort of approach. So bringing some eyes to telecare and being able to prove it with the evidence gleaned from a uniform data set would be very, very valuable. Improved resource use, so service providers being able to divert resources to comply with KPIs. I'll touch on that in the dashboard later on in terms of what we've done with the Vale of Glamorgan and what we're doing with Caerphilly Council. Reduction in costs, so current reporting overhead. Data cleanse as well is always a bit of a nightmare. If you ever want to establish some KPIs and bring some insight into your data at the moment in telecare land, it's very tricky to get it off your ARC platform, convert it onto Excel, and then start building your pivot tables, etc. It needs to be a lot more straightforward and more automated. And then lastly, improved innovation. So we feel standardized data collection can provide a foundation for identifying trends, gaps, and areas of improvement. So moving on to the story so far, we wrote the strategy in 2020. It highlighted our intent to develop a minimum telecare data set in Wales. We began our journey with the Digital Health and Care Directorate, Scottish Government, and the local government digital offices I mentioned. And then we jointly designed a prototype data set, which we sent out to the task force. So on the right-hand side, it's kind of the building blocks that we've taken thus far. So task force, we kicked that off in summer 2022. There was an element of scrutiny arrived to it, and the key themes that emerged was that this data set needs to be realistic and relevant. So this is very much a first version of the data set. When you see it in a moment, you might think it's quite basic. It's deliberate, because what we don't want is huge wholesale changes to the way in which you capture your data at the moment, because there'll be issues with your information governance teams. You'll have to change privacy notices, etc. We want to try and make this, as I mentioned, the main approach for this is to standardize the data. So we want to just make most of the data items that you'll see, you're already capturing, but you'll be capturing them in a different way to your neighbour in the next local authority or housing association over the road. We then drafted a Welsh call set. So thank you to all of the 7 alarm receiving set in Wales who sort of 18 months ago sent us their call actions and reasons. So we were able to apply a bit of business analysis on that. condense them, and arrive at a final conclusion of a call set. That's embedded in the Vale of Glamorgan Council, and it's almost embedded within Caerphilly Council as well. So we've got 2 of the 7 ARCs over the line already. Health conditions, we proposed a health condition pick list. So we've got 140 health conditions. So that, you know, will be a bit of a nightmare for services to kind of get that. But the way in which what we want to try and do is embed that within the platform. So we're working with the likes of Innovation Umo, who've got a few contracts in Wales, to have a pick list, effectively a validated pick list. So when you're doing assessment or reassessment as telecare service providers, you're able to select from that pick list what health condition that person has. No more multiple spellings of Alzheimer's, for example. It will be, you know, uniform, it'll be correct. And all of the terminology and spelling aligns with the NHS SNOMED CT database. So there is already that link into health. Welsh Information Standards Board, as I mentioned, we're the first non-health standard to go through that process. So pros and cons to that. The pros is I get to brag about being the first, but the cons are there isn't any governance around that or route to adoption now. So we're working with colleagues in DHCW, Welsh Government, to try and get a sort of an approach to how we're going to roll this out. And then lastly, host site adoption. So we have to test this out, and we are testing this out. And our senior project manager, Bex, is doing a fantastic job in Caerphilly. So they've recently gone live with the UMO platform in the last couple of weeks. And they're probably 80% there with the data set items. So we're just sort of mopping up the rest. And then we'll use those lessons learned, like we did when we migrated the Vale over to UMO, more around the migration project itself. We'll use those lessons learned from the data set to bring it into the rest of the services in Wales. So this is what the data set looks like. You can screen grab, take pictures if you fancy, but we will be sharing this out later. We're very close. Once we've spoken to members of the LIN in May, June time, we'll send out the master document then to anyone who wants it, and that will have the breakdown of the secondary reasons. So you've got the primary 54 reasons there, but the bits of data that come off the back of that, so things like the call set, so number 33, 34, and 35. You know, obviously it's a meaty document with load of secondary data, so we'll share that out. So we try to break it down into sort of a logical form. So citizen identifier and citizen information and referral information. So 1 to 24 on the left-hand column there is more about that kind of referral assessment and onboarding of the service user. Same with installation information. So that kind of takes you through that. You're then in that kind of monitoring phase. So right the way from core handling at number 30 down to 52. It's kind of, you know, you're an active live telecare service user. So all of the kind of the data coming in relating to calls, relating to proactive calls, relating to response service, onward referral. So looking at reassessments. And then lastly is this kind of the end of cycle for the service user where they have withdrawal from the service. So why have you decommissioned? What was the reason, etc. So that's the data set index there. In terms of, it's all well and good embedding the data set, you know, next steps, we obviously want to get to the point in time where we can convert that into some form of actionable insight and be able to kind of move to a more preventative, proactive approach. You know, the 3 Ps, proactive, personalized, and preventative, have been banged around in our industry for a long time. They resonated with me a few years back when going to one of the iTech conferences. I kind of thought, well, how do we get there? You know, ultimately, and from my perspective, and you know, the fact that councils just don't have any money to invest in well, they just don't have that much money to invest, do they really? Most of them are just kind of washing their faces, unfortunately, with their services. We've got to do more with what we've got, and I think the data that we hold within our ARC platforms and secondary systems, if you don't have an ARC, is like oil. It's untapped. It's very valuable, but it's untapped. So what we need to try and do is unpack that into a series of kind of building blocks and take that kind of iterative approach to go from embedding the data set, step 1, right the way through to step 5, which is actionable insights. And then obviously number 6 is building in a feedback loop. But by embedding the Welsh data set, we then move on to visualization. So I'll show you the BI dashboard that we've developed with the Vale of Glamorgan on the next slide. So that's our kind of first stab at trying to surface some of that data into a visual way that can actually add value to service providers and commissioners. We then move on to analysis. So we would use the BI dashboard then to analyze data to uncover patterns, trends, and relationships, and start to build algorithms to identify correlations and insights with the data. So the way in which we're going to do that is with the help of the program team, with the help of local authorities and housing associations, etc., involved in telecare delivery. But we've also got a PhD student for 3 years, Manjiri. So she's come from Swansea Bay University. She's a computer scientist, and her PhD is all about developing algorithms to look at optimum prevention from telecare data. We're going to look at, in time, tease that out with folding in some health data as well, to try and sort of strengthen that case and try and build a 360 overview of the citizen. But at the moment, her first year is focused solely on building crude kind of mathematical models with existing data to look at whether there's any correlations in the data to support proactive intervention and nudges. Interpretation then, so that would be the next step, and it kind of, you know, it flows on from the analysis piece. So we interpret the findings from the data, understand their implications in the context of our program outcomes. So we have 4 program outcomes, and how they align with our more broader benefit map and realization model. So how do we interpret the data to align with local outcomes and also our national outcomes as well as a program? Number 5 there, I mean, this is the fun bit for us, is the actionable insight. So we're able to arrive at a series of actionable recommendations or decisions that support improved citizen outcomes. So this is the movement towards a preventative service model with those proactive interventions built in, all supported by the data and the tech. But you can see here the data and the tech is just the enabling piece. That bit there, we're going to need to, you know, look at how we work closely or more closer with health, social care and housing. And then lastly, implementation, monitoring, feedback. So monitoring the impact of the proactive interventions regularly or daily, and then continuously track relevant metrics and adapt as necessary. So I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence, but that might be where that comes into it in terms of those reviews. But we're not there yet. It's scary me when people start talking about AI in telecare. When you actually look at the data, I mean, we haven't got clean data to be able to apply, you know, appropriate artificial intelligence modeling, and there's loads around the standards on that. It kind of just worries me a little bit. This is the dashboard that we've created with the Vale of Glamorgan, and it's the last sort of slide that I'm going to go through. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes on this and then open up for questions. I won't touch on call volume, duration, etc. It's mainly performance measures. This page here is around frequent callers. So we're starting to look at, you know, embedding the data set in and starting to lift this out into various pages that hopefully add value. Hour of call is broken down, total calls daily. So you can see there where there's some faults that have kicked in. And then all of these are individual ID numbers. So you can look at frequent calls, for example. Moving on to response. So they have a response service. St. John's Ambulance provides that. So we can break it down per user here in terms of what type of call determined the response officer to come out. Falls, oh, sorry, if I go back into, jumped ahead now. If I go into response, we've created them a heat map. So you can see where the instances of falls happen. So if we click on Barry, and we click on fall management, so you can see how many times someone fell in Barry, for example. Oh, bear with me, I clicked the wrong one. So I click 547. So these are all falls. So in Barry, 196 times someone fell between March and December, 22 to 23. On average, it took them 31 minutes to get there. So that's kind of, 29 minutes to get there once you click on Barry, my mistake. So yeah, it kind of just breaks it down. It gives you an idea. For those of you who manage a response service, it could be quite interesting tool when it comes to resource allocation, for example. Moving on to clients. So we've got a breakdown of new clients, those that ended. Average age of a user is 86. This correlates with what we did in the discovery report. The average age is 86 of a telecare user in Wales. We've then got a device page as well, which looks at the stock. So you can see here the majority of stock out there is the ChipTech device. So we've built that page for them as well. LC analysis. So this is the analysis for individuals who have required the response service. So by clicking into call type and going into full management, we're able to see the amount of falls for these specific individuals. And then you're able to kind of, at a glance, see which ones took more time. So for example, this one here, 77 minutes, you would need to report that on your exception report if you were TSA accredited for response. So you're able to kind of come in and go, right, okay, I know that customer, I'm going to go on my UMO platform and I'm going to interrogate that call. to actually get this information at the moment, if you're on a legacy analog ARC platform, it's going to take you sort of around about 10 minutes to just arrive at a list. We're able to do that instantaneously now with the dashboard, which will obviously help in reducing that kind of overhead and time spent. And then lastly from me today, you'll be pleased to hear, we've done a cost avoidance sheet for the response service as well. So how much money sort of WAST is avoiding paying, and the NHS more broadly. So it kind of looks at the unique fallers, those that are discharged. Kind of this is more performance up here in terms of how long it took them to mobilise, the journey time, and then the time at the call. That might seem quite high, and that's because the Vale of Glamorgan use St John's ambulance to go out and do their visits. So they do the basic medical observations. So they spend a bit more time with the citizen in terms of determining whether they need to be escalated up to ambulance service. So that, I believe, is it. Obviously, give us a shout if you want to find out more. Got all of our email addresses there, and again, the slide deck will be sent out after. Look, I know this is a Welsh data set. We've built it with Scotland, obviously. My kind of grand ambition is for this to be UK wide. So just because if you are an English organisation, please reach out and get in touch, because there's ways in which we can work with you to help support as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. We have some questions coming in on the chat box. First one is from Malcolm Frisk. Is there an intention to build on what appears to be core data set in order to accommodate issues around consent?
Well, not at the moment, Malcolm, in all honesty. As we mentioned in the first slide, the task force who've led this initially in terms of structuring those 54 data items was around kind of what they capture now and just trying to standardize that. So this is very much version 1 of God knows how many, but in time, this is version 1. So we wanted to start on effectively, yes, you're right, a core data set of items that are captured at the moment. And then we're able to kind of tweak and build on that as we sort of move forward and iterate. So it's very much an agile deployment, but we have to start somewhere. And the way in which we want to start that is by establishing that kind of benchmark of core data items that you would typically associate with the telecare service.
Thank you, Aaron. There was a question from Kate Baker around responders. But Gary Pike has responded to that, and hopefully Kate has her answer. So
thanks, Gary.
Don't need to give that, yes. And I think that is it for now. So thank you very much, Aaron. Aaron will be back on the panel at approximately 11:25. So if there are any more questions, we can respond to those then. So I think that is, yes, that's good for now. Thank you, Aaron.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
See you a bit later on. So now we'd like to move on to the next part of this event. During the next 45 minutes or so, there'll be 3 presentations from organisations supporting Tech Cymru, focusing on digital data and innovation within the telecare sector. So please, do continue to put your questions on the chat. At the end of each of the next 3 presentations, I will put your questions to each of the presenters. So now I'd like to hand over to our first of the 3 presenters. And if I could ask Roman Michal to start his video and mic, please. Roman is from Attentive Telecare, based in France, and if you could start your presentation, please.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Does everybody see this, the first slide?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Good morning. My name is Romain Michal. I'm business developer for Attentive in France. I'm here to present you our company and all the devices we manufacture in our company. So Attentive is a business unit from a larger group of the group is Primal. Primal is created in 1984 in Montpellier, south of France. Today we are like 170 employees in Primal, and we sell in more than 30 countries around the world. We have 3 business units, very different sector. The first one is Attentive, and this is the most important part for this meeting. We manufacture telecare devices, digital telecare devices for different countries. We have another business unit who is Solem. We make product for irrigation, and Indigo, we make product for swimming pools. So there are 3 different sectors, but the main thing is we design, we manufacture, and we connect all our devices in our facility in Montpellier, south of France. So we make IoT devices for pro. To be more specific on Attentive and give you some data of our business units, today we are leading the French market for digital telecare devices using SIM cards or dual connectivity. We work with I think 95% of the potential customer in France, and we are growing in Europe since 2017. In different countries with Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, Denmark, and others. And today we are trying to open the UK market since the beginning of this year, and we participate, and we met some of you, I think, during the eTech in 2024. Regarding our devices, we make home, GPS, and wearable telecare devices. All these devices are managed by a platform, our own platform. Its name is MyAttentive. It's totally free of cost, of course. And we have, of course, a multilingual support team that speaks English, German, French, and in some days, Spanish too. Regarding our home telecare devices, the name of these devices is the Luna because it's like an half moon. This slide you see here, it's let's say the most selling equipment in Europe. So 2 kinds. The first one is the Luna 4G. It's this transmitter use a SIM card inside, a roaming SIM card. And we sell it in all countries in Europe. And we have a second one that is the Luna 4 Dual. As you can see, it's a double connectivity using a SIM card, of course, with 4, 3, and 2G, and using a connection in VoIP to Internet box. So VoIP is we can send data and voice over one cable. Okay, all our devices are 2 protocols on this. The first protocol to connect to different platform is our own one, is Solem IP, and of course we are compliant with the standard SkyP. All our devices are warranty of 3 years, and we are at social alarm 2. The third one is the Luna 4 Dual Plus. It's the most advanced of our devices. It's exactly a Luna 4 Dual as we saw before, but we had some Bluetooth, some RFID, and some Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is not for connecting directly to the internet box. It's a protocol you have between the Luna and the screen to share photo, text messages, and etc. And all these link using a mobile app to send these messages and the different photos. The Bluetooth is for connecting objects like infrared, dose sensor, etc. Of course, you see of the infrared and etc. But you have other connected objects you can put on, like for fire alarm. You have for gas, for monoxide, for pool cards, pretty much everything you need on it. And of course, all of these devices are managed using our platform MyAttentive. Regarding our GPS equipment, the name is the Luna Mobile. As you can see, the Luna Mobile is exactly Luna 4G, so it's using a modem they can connect to the 4, the 3, and the 2G. Okay, only one button. We propose it with the pendant 2, So different kind of setting on this product. So you can set up using the platform. You just have to press your pendant or the Luna Mobile and send your geolocalization to the platform. If you want, you can make some geofencing using a tracking mode and ask the Luna Mobile to send his position every X minutes. And of course, everything is managed using the platform MyAttentive that we saw just after. In terms of wearable telecare, we have two kinds of pendants that is working on all our devices. So the first one is the M4. The M4 is a normal pendant you can have on gray or on red. And if you are larger quantity, we can put other color on it. It's linked by radio. It's IP67, of course. And this month we are launching our own falling detector. It's a M5, as you can see. The falling detector working as a bracelet or a pendant. And you can replace the battery, and you have a Bluetooth connection for indoor geolocalization using Beacon 2. Regarding the falling detection, you need to know that all our devices are working too with Vitalbase with the VB Hawk that I think some of you know. So you have the choice of using an M5 or a Telecom Design one, a Vitalbase VB. Regarding our devices, as you can see, we can customize all the Luna. So you can put your logo on it, on the different button, or you can put some effect on it, some like wood, carbon. We have a lot of propositions to make you. Regarding the certification to connect to other platform, today we are certified and operational with, of course, UMO and IoTcoms.io, and we are in progress with Scale Response, and we think it will be available very soon for all the equipment you saw before. Regarding our platform, as I explained, the platform, of course, free of charge. And when you are a customer, you have an access with a login and a password, okay? And we can create a lot of login for all your team, and you can set up different, user rights on it. So, for example, this is the first page when you enter a new platform, and you have, different graphics that show you all the Luna you have on your on the field and the model you have. It's like a 4G or dual, etc. You have, of course, the Luna who has a connection to your platform or not connected to. You can see the power supply, and you can make some logistic on it. Something important, as you can see at the bottom, you have the network. So it means you can see the network that the equipment catch in a certain area in the country. And this is useful when you want to install a new devices and to know if you have some network there. This is, for example, when I'm Naldo that I have an equipment. So all the time you have the picture of the equipment with this serial number and all the connected objects that is linked to this Luna. So you have different logo, as you can see, the green or red or orange. And of course, if all is green, all is okay. And if you have some red or orange, they have a little issue. So you can organize, a maintenance if needed. Something important on the MyAttentive platform is the platform was made to avoid a maximum of intervention from tech team on the field. You can manage pretty much everything at distance. I'll give you some example. You can reset at distance a Luna. You can add a pendant, can add different things at distance without be near the equipment. So there are a lot of connectivity and a lot of options on the platform that they need to have, let's say, a biggest presentation on it. In terms of impact, of course, we are an industry, so we are proposing reconditioning thing. So it means when we have different offer, but most of the time in all the country in Europe, we propose after 4 years, you just send back the equipment. We change all the plastic, we retest the electronic parts, we change the battery, the pendant, we clean everything, and we send you back with a 1 year warranty on it. In terms of support, the support team, as I mentioned, is totally multilingual. Okay, and speak fluent English, French, and German. The team makes the training, so it can be on-site or using a video conferences. The training is for using the platform or the device. And we have 2 websites with a login that we can give you with a lot of video to how to install a Luna 4G or Luna Dual or what you want. And we have 2 other video to explain you how to use the platform and all the platform can offer to you. In terms of data, today our the data are in France, but it's not a problem if it's needed to have the data directly in UK. So thank you very much for your time and your attention. And here you have all my number and all my details. Do not hesitate to contact me. I am in UK every month, so if you need a demo, we can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you for that insight into the products and services at Attentive Care. Roman will be on the panel, as will all the other presenters later on in this session. So for now, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
A slight change to the next presenter. Roman, if you could switch off your video.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
To the next presenter from IoT Solutions Group, Neil Force will be giving that presentation. So Neil, if you could please start your video. Hi, Neil.
Hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Neil, and this is Emma.
Good morning.
We are founders of IoT Solutions Group, and I'm very happy and delighted to be invited here to present. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you, but can't see your presentation yet.
Not yet. Let's see if I push this button. Let's see what happens. Can you see the presentation?
I can now, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so the purpose of our presentation today is to really highlight what we see are the barriers to scaling adult social care. But why is scaling important? Well, we know that the sector of adult social care is at a pinch point, to say the least. 80% of British people want to live independently, but when we get to 2038, which I always find a very scary number, 1 in 4 people will be over the age of 65. So in terms of being able to serve that demographic, we have to become more efficient. And to echo Sarah and Aaron's presentation earlier about the benefits of data, specifically the proactive and preventative service model that we endorse, we believe that one of the truisms as a statement that we're providing here today from our philosophy is that data-driven prioritization of adult social care services enables that scalability. If you can prioritize very scarce resources through data-driven prioritization proactively to intervene as early in their journey as possible, then that benefits not just costs, but the vulnerable independent person themselves. Another statement that we hold true is that without data prioritization, adult social care services cannot scale. Data is key to a proactive and preventative service model moving forward. And another statement that we hold true is that the prerequisite to long-term scalability of adult social care is real-time quantitative data that drives inferred real-time qualitative assessment. So that statement's a bit of a mouthful. What do I mean by that? Well, in terms of qualitative and quantitative data, we can deploy devices, we can deploy sensors, we can deploy any number of data points within the home, and that's quantitative data. Is the door open or closed? Is the tap on or off? Is the fridge open or closed? But by inferring multiple data points together, then we can give qualitative data, such as an advisory note or an alert through a text message or an email, or an integration to a third-party platform, be it the many that are out there: Umo, Sky Response, Jontech, Archangel, Apello, of which we happily integrate and play with them all. But what I really want to talk about is the barriers to scaling. And what we believe and what we hear back from the market is, through that technology stack, on the right-hand side, the barriers are very low. But on the left-hand side of that technology stack, the barriers increase, and they increase exponentially. Specifically, what do I mean by that? Well, on the right-hand side, to send an email is very simple. It can scale. You can send any number of emails. I wish I received less emails, to be honest with you, every day, but they are virtually free, tiny fractions of a penny per email. Very, 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 very scalable. Moving through the technology stack, if you automated a PDF report from some intelligence or displayed that graphically, again, very scalable, because they sit on what is essentially infinitely scalable infrastructure. These scale points are not challenging. However, to get that quantitative data, you need to transmit it. And that's where the cost points and the challenges and the difficulties do increase slightly. But the real cost is the way with which smart sensors are deployed. And that's why we're in this business. We're an IoT company. So you can look at barriers to scaling through another metric, which is essentially marginal cost. Marginal cost in business terms is the cost to add one more. As I said, emails, the cost to add one more email is a tiny fraction of a single penny. But the cost to add sensors is significant. It can be tens of pounds in some cases. So the barriers really do lay heavy on the left-hand side of the technology stack. Statement 4 then, in our experience, poor sensor selection is the most significant barrier to scalability. You have to install them, activate them, connect them, maintain them. Well, in fact, you have to do a lot more than that. There is a total cost of ownership concern with regard to sensor deployment. You have to purchase them, deliver them, install them, have training, have how to install them. There's operational labor, there's maintenance, what happens if the battery goes, there's information security, which we must never forget. Then they have to be powered in some instances, and there's a health and safety concern around that as well. It is a complexity that costs, and that cost is a considerable barrier to scaling. So as an example of how we as an organization have solved that problem, we have a product, we call it Doris Care. I have a device here, I don't know if you can see that. It's very small and it fits through a letterbox. You can order one today and it will arrive at your grandparents' house tomorrow. And it's designed in such a way which is unique on the market, that when it arrives, it is very, very simple to install. You take it out of its packaging, remove a simple battery isolation tab, and that's the installation done. There's no wires, there's no plugs, there's no batteries to fit, there's no passwords to set, there's no hub to set up, there's no broadband to connect to, nothing to do. So we enjoy, and our customers enjoy, deploying these completely seamlessly. The installation is less than 30 seconds. And when you have multiple devices in a home, that adds up to a cost point. And if our view is, if a 5-year-old cannot install it, then we've done something wrong. In this case, the product is delivered, it sits in the kitchen, it monitors atmospheric conditions, and we aggregate all that atmospheric data to our cloud analytics platform. We run our own AI against that data, and we can extract very specific markers from the atmospheric data that indicate the preparation of food and drink. And then we build a digital twin of Doris's behavior. in the preparation of food and drink throughout the day. And if she materially deviates in any negative way, then we can raise alerts, and that resident gets a telephone call. Hey, you've slowed down. Are you okay? We have saved 17 or 18 or so lives. We've got thousands deployed. But the point here is that it's a zero effort, highly scalable solution that enables unobtrusive monitoring that saves lives. Following on from that product, we call that Doris. We have we don't sit around twiddling our thumbs. Our R&D team are very active. We have a portfolio of products called Doris Pro, and those products is not just a single sensor, but now we have multiple sensors. And we follow the principle very firmly, that pillar of thought, that if a 5-year-old can't install it, then we haven't done our job. Each device needs to be installed. It needs to be installed by someone who's not technical. It needs to be installed within seconds. It cannot rely on a hub, a Wi-Fi link, anything that may preclude a speedy and simple installation. There will be an announcement later this year, formally, of Doris Care Pro as a portfolio of products that enables insights moreover than we provide with our standard Doris product with regard to the well-being of an individual in their activity of daily living, just in the kitchen, but throughout the house, and whether they're in the house or out of the house, and what their routines are in a more granular way. For those that are technical, the way that Doris Pro works is that we have multiple devices. We choose networks that are ubiquitous across the world, not just the UK, but Europe as well. And we use cloud analytics platforms running tool chains to provide inference. We integrate freely with third-party platforms, be it Umo, Sky Response, whoever it may be, John Tech. We've integrated with them all. And we provide inferred outcomes. And those inferred outcomes with Doris as it stands is simply a change in habit with regard to the preparation of food and drink. Have they slowed down? But Doris Pro is a new dawn of insights. And we are really excited to announce, and you will be hearing an announcement very soon of what those insights are. I'm not going to publicly announce them here, but let's be very clear. Those insights will provide full PDF reports of a status of an individual with regard to their well-being and their frailty being directly proportional to the probability of a fall. And those insights are available in human readable format. No data analytics is needed by the care staff whatsoever. Those are also available as downloads on demand or through periodic reports through emails. Just to point that those are also available in any language, in any format, to comply with what Sarah and Aaron were speaking of at the beginning of this call, standardization of data formats. That's an imperative. And we hold true to that in every regard, regardless of format, regardless of the specification, and indeed regardless of language. So to conclude, the barriers to adult social care scalability. Data must be qualitative so that it can be easily interpreted by care staff. Care staff are not data scientists. Care staff don't have the time to trawl through quantitative data to infer the well-being of an individual. And the higher the quality of that qualitative data, the more efficient that care provision can be provided, and therefore the higher the scalability. Qualitative insights at scale are inferred in software from quantitative data sources, not just from devices. They can be from any domain at all. Are they paying their heating bills on time? Through other data mining activities. But principally, the majority of insights about the well-being of an individual that gives insights around their well-being for a proactive service model are mainly from ADL, activity of daily living sensor devices. And to hold true to the ethos of this presentation, to really conclude, to scale adult social services, activity of daily living sensors must be total cost of ownership optimal. They must be simple to install, have zero barrier to entry, and have a maintenance and service model that requires no human interaction. So that really concludes the presentation I wanted to give. I hope you find it useful. Any questions?
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for the presentation. We have a question from Malcolm. What control do I have as a 74-year-old of the data that Doris collects? How is it collected? How is it shared? And where's my data held? Who is it shared with, etc.?
Right, that's a very good question. Data sovereignty is absolutely of vital importance, and trust in everything that is done in the data domain needs to be held in the highest regard. All the data that we collect, that we analyze, is held onshore in the UK, in UK servers. Whatever country we deploy in, it's held in the sovereign nation of that domain. It is held secured. All data is encrypted at rest and in transit, and the only way that data insight can be viewed is by registered personnel of the care organisation. Does that answer the question?
We'll wait for a reply from Malcolm, but in the meantime, thank you very much. And I've just had no response yet. Thank you very much for now, and we'll see you a bit later on the panel session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to move on to our final presentation. And that presentation will be given by Brian Brown of Archangel. And hi, Brian. I can see your presentation, so if I can hand over to you now to start. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for staying with us through this time. Appreciate the offer from Tech Cymru for us to join today, and obviously for UK Telehealthcare to host it. So I'm joined by my colleague Tom Morton. Tom will join at the Q&A. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to just kind of join between two screens here, so my eyes are kind of down to the left. So I'm here to talk about kind of Archangel and how we can provide a better way. So for those that are not familiar or less familiar, Archangel is a collaborative platform, and we work across. We're completely agnostic. We work across all the service providers in the market, and the reason for that is to be completely agnostic and truly interoperable of the data that we collect. We're a fully cloud-based digital platform, fully distributed alerting. Some of the points that Neil was referring to there about actually referencing the alerting response to that, and I'll get through that in a little bit more kind of detail. We have a range of partners, some of which are actually on the call today, that integrate data into the Archangel platform, and our driver for that is reducing around siloed data sets. We have a strategic platform that provides population stratification. So I was delighted to hear some of the discussions that Sarah and Aaron were referring there around the work that's going on locally and then nationally. Within Wales, that's actually some work that we're involved in as part of the Scottish Government, as part of a population stratification tool there. Just if I can make one kind of reference, Malcolm asked the question around data sharing and sovereignty around that. That's actually part of the work that we're doing within the Scottish Government piece, and actually that involves personal data stores where actually the individual is actually then in control of the data, and they control who has access to that information. They are happy to pick that up separately. We are research driven, fully approached to, we need to move, I think it's very much the numbers that we spoke about, we need to move from a react and respond model to predict and prevent, and I'll speak a bit more about that as we go through. How we do that is through 4 fundamental pillars. We have the Connect, where we connect up any device for any platform, any network into the Archangel platform. We have a range of partners that do that, some of which can be low-powered sensors, some of which will obviously be other partners. We then assess that data into various dashboards where we can obviously visualize, contextualize, and report upon that data. But the power really of that comes from what I describe as those dashboards obviously being haystacks. The power of that comes from the needles that come from the haystack, which is where the response capability then comes. And then what they evolve is how we build on that. How can we evolve those A to D needs? How can we move from one platform into moving away those silos? We achieve that by building in our kind of certified partner program. So if there's any other partners on the call that would like to have a discussion around that, about bringing that into that kind of population size platform, we're very keen to kind of have that. And that kind of, in our opinion, removes away that compete play from what is often seen around different kind of hub-based and sensor-based manufacturers selling siloed systems. Our Connect, so just to dip into those in a little bit more detail. So there'll be some of these kind of range of technologies I'm sure will be familiar to people on the calls. So where that's kind of full kind of A to D protocols, whether it's analog and digital protocols that are fully compliant into the Archangel kind of platform. That increasingly is now including a range of IoT solutions, and that will be ranging from low power, such as NB-IoT and LoRa, and we have full integration then back with full two-way integration with the Amazon product suite. Really what we're trying to do by offering out the APIs is then build in that collaboration. We have to remove away those siloed data sets. Only just 2 weeks ago, sitting in an organised local authority organisation, 2 separate rooms, looking at data of the same individual across 2 different systems, and never the twain shall meet. There's clearly risk. There's clearly resource pressures across all services, and that's certainly one easy way of aggregating that together. But clearly it makes sense and provides clearly a better way into doing that. The assess aspect of it, again, I'd scribbled down some notes from what Aaron and Sarah had mentioned, is around structured data sets, recording. Clearly those inputs, the outputs rather, have to be formed from the inputs in the first place. So that's obviously very important. That's all something that we can obviously take care of within the Archangel platform, and also around like SNOMED code standardization across kind of health and from telehealth devices. Again, that can all be tied together in terms of that population piece at kind of an aggregated level. We build all these lovely dashboards, and effectively we don't want people to look at them, because we only want them to look at them when there's clearly something there that people that are interest to individuals. How we build the platform and how we deal with the dashboard and aspect of things is very much geared towards personalising that message to that individual. So whether that's a health individual, whether it's a social care colleague, or whether it's perhaps someone within housing or third sector, that message and narrative is very, very personalised to them. I noticed that I believe that in some of the reports that Aaron was sharing was on kind of Power BI system. So that's obviously taking data from other places and aggregating that together into a centralised view. I'm aware that that's obviously a kind of a desire of some organisations to use such resources. And again, that's something that we can clearly, the data, Archangel, we see ourselves as obviously a data processor. It's not our data. So we will obviously then push that data into other tools such as reporting if that's required. I mentioned about the haystack of data. What I want to talk about now is effectively the needles that come from the haystack. So really, where are those kind of trigger points? And this is really where the kind of heartbeat of the Archangel platform sits. So it's how we transpose data into information. That requires the move, a wider move, and it's something we've been doing for a long time around using data to drive data-driven decision makings, and we do that through a variety of those kind of formats. Distributed alerting is clearly key. What I've spoke about a little earlier is obviously the kind of touch points, if I can get my mouse to move, around the bottom here of connecting up various devices. So whether that is IoT solutions or whether that's data that's coming in from telecare service devices, or whether that's other ambient assisted sensor-based technologies, providing a range of information into the Archangel platform. Currently, as it stands, and some of the things, even the reference that Roman made, they will go straight to Z in terms of the alarm receiving centre. So if we think of this as like an alphabet, why does everything have to go to the Arc? There's clearly so much pressure on the Arcs. Archangel is a fully digital Arc solution, but actually what we believe is that distributed capability, there's plenty of letters of that alphabet that come in the lead up to that. So some of that might be family, and then some of that might be emergency services, some of that might be facilities or housing or other health and care practitioners. It's about the appropriateness of that message. That is exactly what the platform can do at that early stage. It's the involvement of others. It's the involvement of the family. It's the involvement of the community in the third sector that clearly is pressure upon services are there. We have to have the tools in order to facilitate all of that happening. And it says in the kind of bullets, I'm not going to read these, but there's clearly a variety of different formats in terms of that response coming through. In terms of kind of more formal reporting around that might be about what is around kind of skills-based alerting. Does the person speak Urdu? We have to have someone who's able to converse in a specific language around that. Is there a particular skill set that responder has to have? Do they require specific mental health training? If thinking more broadly in that around housing providers, for example, I noticed there was some kind of housing colleagues on the call. Does the trades, do we have tradespeople with the relevant skills? Is a plumber I need as opposed to an electrician? It's those types of skill sets that the alerting within the platform will pick up. We link fully to our responder app, and actually thinking through of that Z of the Arc, currently instead of all of those alerts going through to an alarm receiving centre currently, why don't we actually broadcast those out via via an app based on the appropriate skill requirement of that person and perhaps even the GPS requirements of the area. I need a skill set that's in the north of the town, not the south. That's exactly what the Archangel Responder app does, and it will take account of the skill requirement, but also the positioning to allow the responder to fully manage all of those alerts and responses. That's before it even hits anywhere close to the alarm receiving centre. Beyond that, however, with Archangel's heritage and lone worker security, we have a fully compliant BS 8484 lone worker platform, so we fully manage the capability there. I'll finish just on this slide. I'd referenced at the start the work that's going on around with Scottish Government and the Digital Health and Care Institute. We were fortunate enough, along with the DHI, to win the awards at the recent iTech solution, and the whole focus around that is aggregating data across multiple data sets and building that into a population stratification tool that indeed is then able to be managed directly by the citizen in terms of that access. I appreciate the slides will be shared afterwards, and we have a little animation that where individuals can actually then look to see the kind of benefits of the platform in action. So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Brian. And I'd like to say also thank you to Roman, Neil, Emma, and again, Brian for their presentations. So for now, thank you, Brian. And we'd like to move on. Brian, if you could stop sharing your screen, please. I'd like to move on to our next part of this event, and that is the panel session. So I'd like to ask Jerry to come back online and Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Terence, and thank you to all our presenters for their presentations over the last half hour. Before we move into the panel session, I just wanted to follow up on what I was talking about at the beginning of today's event regarding the events we'll be running in 2024 and 2025 as we move to the analog to digital transformation of the UK telephone network. We think it's really, really important to support service users, providers in the telecare industry during this period, and hence we started with today's session. Our next session in this program of events will be in London, and it'll be a live event at the BT Global Headquarters in Aldgate in East London. And this is a free event for all providers and public sector organisations who have an interest in this and supporting their service users and patients through the transformation. As I said, the event is free. There'll also be free lunch and refreshments throughout the day that have been sponsored by some of our supplier members. We'll have at least 30 supplier members there, as well as communications providers and governmental organisations. So it's a really good opportunity to come along, to ask your questions and to help move your service users and patients not only safely but economically over the course of the next year and a bit. So we hope we'll see you at that. All the details and the registrations information is on our website, and you'll be able to register from there. So now I'd like to ask all our presenters to come back on so we can cover some of the questions that have been raised both before and during the event today. Brian, Neil, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all very much, as I said, for your presentations and input today. So the first question...
Gary, just to interrupt, the video sharing for me has been disabled by the host. Thank you. Thank you.
Purely unintentional, Neil. Okay, so our first question comes from Stuart Carroll from ChipTech, and we talked a lot about data and how sensitive that area of work is. So Stuart's question is really relevant, and Stuart's asked, how do you feel about proprietary data management, particularly supplier-specific access via subscriptions being used to store tech users' data? So maybe we'll start with Aaron.
I'll try and be brief on this, just purely because it's sort of supplier relevant and it sits a bit uneasy with me kind of going in on it, but I'll give my own opinion on it. I think we worked with our consultancy partners Farpoint around about 2 years on this, because between us we kind of identified or felt that one of the main risks of DMPs and having them, you know, every sort of supplier of traditional kind of dispersed kit at the time offering a DMP, it was kind of another way of locking you in. So I know when I managed worked as a project manager within Cardiff Council's telecare service, we procured a digital device and ended up having an obscene amount of alerts from the DMP coming through, and also via email as well. So we had to almost create, as we were the first to go digital with the equipment in Wales, we had to almost create a set of process maps off the back of that, in terms of, right, if you've had a signal drop, do you really want to be calling someone at 2 a.m, for example? You know, so it kind of unearthed a lot of difficulties, I suppose, in terms of managing sort of risk and what's an acceptable tolerance of that risk as a service provider offering telecare, because you wouldn't know about a drop in signal if in the old analog world. So there's twofold really. I see it as potentially a way of service providers being limited, because you don't want to have to manage 3, 4, 5 DMPs, but you might want to offer 3, 4, 5 different types of digital product. And then also it's that kind of managing that kind of process off the back of that to ensure that you know, you're keeping the people safe and well. But ultimately, in terms of it holding tech users' data, I veer on the side of caution on that. I think the ARC should be the host site for that data, because that is where the alert will be sent and you'll be presented with the citizen record. And if you know, let's say you outsource your ARC provision or your call monitoring provision, who's the onus on there in terms of the responsibility to monitor service user data? Is it you as the commissioner and the purchaser of that kit, but you outsource the monitoring of that? What's the agreement in place? Because that will obviously change and the lines will become increasingly blurred on who the responsibility is to monitor that data. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Brian and Tom.
Can I maybe answer slightly? I'm conscious that Brian's done all the hard work and heavy lifting, so I thought I'd maybe just chip in. You know, we're still here. I'm going to be slightly contentious and probably disagree with Aaron in terms of the location of the data. I do accept that the alarm receiving center is a central focal point today, and therefore I accept that current models will probably produce data to be held in that location. But my no surprises, I guess, is that the person that should own the data is me. I own my data. And as far as I'm concerned, I should decide where my data is shared. And that's kind of some of the work we're doing in Scotland at the moment with the DHI, which is to use a personal data store where that data is held by me, and as a consumer of that service, I will decide where my data goes. I accept, though, that current models push data everywhere. And that's really why we have open APIs, to try and bring those solutions together. But as the service provider, whether it's government-led or whether it's local authority-led, then those key individuals have the duty of care. And as a consequence, they must be able to control that data in the short term until we move to a personal data stratification plane. But it doesn't necessarily mean to say that we need multiple silos of personal data across each organization or across each platform. I think APIs will allow control of that personal data to be held centrally, perhaps in the local authority's domain, and then read as required as part of a profile API. That's my personal view.
Thanks, Tom. Neil and Emma.
I have to agree with Tom in the point regarding the residents' data is their data, they own the data. The reason that data exists is because it is focusing on the well-being of the individual, and they're signing up for that purpose. But they're signing up for that purpose and only that purpose. And there is very robust GDPR legislation, very robust information security legislation that means that it's incumbent on every technology provider to comply to that legislation. No one I've met in this industry wants to fall outside of that legislation. We all agree it's great legislation. Yes, it's a burden, but it's the right level of focus for protecting data. So because the legislation exists, because it is bounded per user and under a specific use, and the legislation is very clear on that, and we're all professional and we play nicely, I don't see any problem at all.
Thank you. Roman, have you a view from the wider European market?
Yeah, for us, all our devices send, of course, alarms, urgent alarm, technical alarms, and everything to the different calling center and the different ARC. So how we manage this, we send on priority all the information to the ARC, and where they treat every alarm we send a copy directly to the platform that I presented before, so the MyAttentive platform. So the priority is to the ARC, and after that, you own a copy in the platform that the customer can use. The platform, we can create a specific platform for each customer, and we can put the data where they want. So yeah.
Thank you very much. So the second question comes from Gary Pike from Vale Glamorgan. And Gary's question is, what role will off-the-shelf products have in the development of digital products and services in the future? So I suppose Gary's talking very much about the Alexas and Google Homes of this world and integrating those with services. Let's start with Neil.
Well, my mum has one, and she didn't before I insisted she did, because she's 78, and it's a fantastic tool for family and friends to be able to communicate and be able to understand the well-being of the individual. But that doesn't preclude that off-the-shelf products can be integrated into whatever remit or feature or function that is deemed appropriate for the insights and the well-being of the individual. I think they will become more and more prolific. Certainly, Amazon's Alexa. I don't know if anyone is aware of the roadmap that Amazon has regarding a project called Sidewalk. That looks very interesting. And I think it's inevitable that all the organizations in this domain will be embracing those technologies moving forward.
Sarah, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I actually had my hand up for the first question, so I'll touch on that and then I'll touch on what Neil said. I think what Aaron was referring to, and I agree with what everyone has said, but I think what Aaron was referring to was in terms of storing that data to react appropriately, particularly with people without that capacity to make those decisions. I mean, Brian, we come from a social care background, so sometimes you do have to make those decisions. And Katie asked a question about mental capacity. So I think there is a difference between storing the data for the end user and how that's actually stored. And I take Stuart's point about proprietary DMPs, but there has to be some way to store that data to support that end user or their carer. In terms of looking to what Gary's question was, and I know they've done quite a lot of work in the Vale regarding using IoT type kit. Yes, of course, there's a role for it. I mean, there are people walking around. I always refer to my 72-year-old father, who I bought an Apple Watch for. And wouldn't it be great if we could integrate his Apple Watch into some sort of social care provision? Why would we want to give him something else when he's got an asset that we can take that data from? And he'd be quite happy to share that data if he thought that he was getting a personalized service from it. I think we just have to be, and this is my personal view, very careful about thinking that the equipment from Amazon is the panacea to sorting all of social care's issues out. It's not. It has to be personalised and it has to be considered with the end user. Again, particularly with people without that capacity that can't respond to Google or Amazon alerts in the same way that perhaps all of us on the panel would want to be able to. So I think yes, but we have to think carefully about how it's used, and we have to think about the future of where we're going in terms of the overall service provision with the end user.
Thanks, Sarah. Tom.
Thanks. I just wanted to also echo the fact that I think when we're involving any product with regard to connectivity, we are looking at this holistically from a resilience perspective, and there are certain requirements incumbent upon any of the providers to make sure that the service is resilient. So I think it's key that whilst we accept that consumer devices exist, we need to consider the what ifs. So if for example we're going to use an Amazon product, what if that product is unavailable? Ultimately, it is a consumer product. is there an alternative method of contacting that individual? Is there an alternative method when that individual cannot use the Amazon product? Do they have an alternative method by which to raise an alarm? And I think it's just about that holistic view again, about what's inside the home from a tech perspective, but also from the perspective of resilience. We need to consider the points of failure. So whilst I mean, we're obviously agnostic to that. So can we accept an Amazon product? Absolutely, we can. But we've also considered the what if. So we've also looked at, well, what if we can't make contact with the Amazon product? Can we in fact then contact via a social alarm, or can we in fact contact via a smart TV? And all of these are options, as is making a phone call into the property, but as long as the phone call can be answered. So we've got options available if you have the right, I guess, all the products connected into what we term an ambient assisted living environment. And that's where our platform then begins to add that resilience, because you can have point A of connectivity, then point B of connectivity, and point C of connectivity. I'm ex-military. I like my resilience. Just a point.
Thank you, Tom. Roman, anything to add to that?
No, it's okay. I'm agree with Tom on what to say.
Thank you. So the next question is around something I think that you all touched on in your presentations, and that is looking at preventative and proactive services, which is, I think, underlines a lot of what we're talking around about the digital world. So Ben Webber from MyCare asked, what are your plans around the preventative approach from your services and products? So maybe we could start with either Sarah or Aaron before we move on to the suppliers.
Happy to take that, if that's okay with you, Aaron. I mean, in terms of our plans, we are quite clear that our plans are to support those 22 local authorities and 34-ish housing associations and a third sector to develop those systems to support the end user. We don't deliver services directly. We support those local authorities to do so. And I suppose what that means is working collaboratively. We are much stronger working collaboratively. I've been encouraging local authorities to try and consider working on a regional basis for quite some time. I was doing it way before I came into my Tech Cymru role. If you can develop, there were regional partnership boards in Wales, if we can develop services that sit on that regional partnership footprint, they will be much more sustainable and greater funded going forward, and that's the importance in this. But essentially, we will do whatever we can do within the programme remit to support those local authorities to move forwards in a safe and sustainable way.
Thank you, Sarah. And what about from the supplier side? How do you feel about the move to preventative and proactive, and how do your services fit into that? Should we start with Neil, maybe? Thank you.
So I'll take that, if I may. I mean, we've seen a real drive and ambition for, for things to move to a much more proactive model. I mean, the slide that Neil referenced to in his presentation about DORA's Pro actually stands for proactive. And we've worked really closely with Aaron and Sarah and other experts in this field to make sure that actually the direction we're moving forward in and the data that we can gather that will ensure that people can live, longer, more safely at home, and sometimes have cognitive impairment, or means that they can't interact with equipment as you or I might be able to. It's really, really encouraging to see, and it's this sort of collaborative, methodology that Sarah referred to is key. We don't have all the answers, but by working with people in the field that know what they want, they know what the users need, and they've got far more insights on which direction we should be going in. I think it's definitely the way forward.
Brian.
Yeah, thank you. I've been building preventative models on false prevention for the last 9 years. So this is not new. We can do this. The problem is siloed data sets. That's a big problem. There's data all over the place. So how do you build neural networks on in proper deep machine learning when there's limited data, but the data is in various spots? We need to use technology that folk are comfortable with as well. We need to remove digital literacy. We need to make it easy for people. It has to be passive. It has to be comfortable, because if people don't use it or they don't engage with it, that clearly brings no data in there. I'm just literally submitting my PhD thesis on how you scale up remote monitoring digital technologies. So there's 28 interviews that I've done, 27 people, I just look back there at my notes, 27 out of 28 people spoke of the need to remove siloed data sets, and we have to bring that together. That is going to provide the aggregation of data in order then for a true analysis then to be done. We have to move from that Z I described of everything going to an arc. We have to distribute that, and we have to build that to a much more sustainable model of families, third sector, community-based supports, rather than statutory services and housing services having full responsibility for that. Because if that's the case, the tide is too high. The rabbit's away, gone at that point. Certainly from an Archangel point of view, we've been building machine learning models for a number of years. The more data that comes into these, anyone who's kind of familiar building quantitative models will understand. Data scientists are greedy buggers. The more data you need, the better. And that allows you to move from to evolutionary machine learning models that clearly take that learned behaviour of the person, but it has to be over combined data.
Speaking with data, a question from Malcolm Fisk says, Malcolm asks, what happens when the service provider is sold? Will my historic data be included? That's a very general question, and will vary from service to service. But anyone wanted to take that? Neil.
I can take that. The terms and conditions of the data carry forward to the owner. Data is owner independent in regard to the terms and conditions around its conveyance, its storage. So whoever acquires a business also acquires the terms and conditions of the data of that business.
Thank you, Neil. Brian or Tom, did you want to?
I'll happily take that. Again, I think absolutely Neil's correct. I think what's got to be specified is whether or not the owner of the data is entitled to have whether the owner of the data has lost control of it. And I think the reality is that depending on the terms and conditions, we act as data processors. We don't act as the data controller. So the data controller is always whoever owns that data. And obviously, as I've mentioned before, in my view, that should be the consumer themselves. But in the current modeling, that means that the data controller currently is the authority or the service provider who is providing that service. And that then has to translate through to the end user who becomes the data controller. So it's about the organization of the commercial terms that determines what happens. But as Neil quite rightly says, if the business is sold, then the service is sold and the contracts are sold with it.
Thank you for that clarification. The next question comes from Ellen Roderick from West Wales Care and Repair. And I think I'll aim, this is a fairly local one for you, Sarah, perhaps. Says, what are the plans for fair and equal provision of digital services in rural areas where internet signal is poor or sporadic?
Yeah,
it's a big issue, isn't it? Particularly in Wales with the rurality of some of the local authorities. I mean, I live in Monmouthshire and I struggle to maintain consistent and adequate cellular and broadband coverage, quite honestly. So in terms of the proactive work that we are doing as a programme, we are actively working with BT and the other CPs to ensure that initially those vulnerable groups are not migrated over to a digital line without full understanding of how that affects them, and if they've got equipment that would work, and if their local authority service can actually support them in that. So that's the first thing to think about. And there's been a number of roadshows that are happening across Wales to raise public awareness of the digitalisation of phone lines. We're also working with suppliers. We have very good relationships with all of the mainstream providers in terms of ensuring that the equipment has as many pathways as absolute possible. So we're talking dual SIM, we're talking Ethernet, we're talking Wi-Fi. We're obviously talking to Tom and Brian about other options in terms of LoRa or IoT, because that might be the game changer in some parts of rural Wales in terms of local authority and how they work towards accessing that provision. But lastly, I think it's a big question, but I think it poses other questions, because I'm actually on the National Digital Inclusion Skills Programme Board. There's a digital skills issue here, as well as coverage. We've got, Aaron mentioned, we've got average age users in their 80s. Their digital skills are probably quite poor. So there's a question mark around improving those skills to ensure that these people, even when coverage expands, and it will expand, it will get better, that they are in a good position to be able to access digital services. But there's also an issue of cost and parity, because whilst these services move towards using a SIM-based provision, that's completely different to how we've been historically and sweated. I know it's a Brian term, but sweated the customer's asset in terms of their own phone line. We are now moving into a brave new world of obviously SIM provision and broadband, which is much more expensive generally. So, is there an issue around cost? So I think we have to look at this in the round. It's about coverage, and there are definitely pockets of Wales they've got an issue, and we raise this regularly with Welsh Government and people talking about this infrastructure. But it's also about digital skills, and it's also about fairness and parity of how affordable this is. So yeah, we are all over this, but it's a big problem, isn't it? And again, it's going to take many people to solve. But yeah, we are considering it all the time.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question is, have any housing associations or social care settings in South Wales implemented a Doris device for residents, or are there any trial results?
The answer is yes. We're just trying to find out the details. It's Glamorgan.
Yeah, Glamorgan are part of the Doris Proactive trial. That's Sarah and Aaron have assisted with that. We were hoping to have another council involved as well, but yeah, Glamorgan are moving forward, helping us with that beta test trial.
And again, I've had a Doris device in my property, one of the many things I've trialed, so I am more than happy. I live in South Wales. I'm more than happy to talk to people about that.
And just to touch on the challenges of connectivity, we've worked in some very rural locations throughout the country where there is no mobile phone signal and traditional technology can't get data actually out of a home. That's why we're working with the two IoT networks that we are with NB-IoT and LTM, because that does give us, I think it's 99.8% population coverage now, and we are able to put devices into very, very rural locations, including across Wales. Sarah and I have had this conversation several times now. So,
in locations that don't have mobile phone signal coverage, even though they're supplied by Vodafone and O2, they're very different networks. They use different carrier frequencies that have an amazing penetration deep into buildings where mobile phone signals can't penetrate.
Thank you. I think Kate also wanted to look at the quantity. So in terms of your trial, what sort of numbers are you looking at to implement within Wales?
So there's two aspects to this. One is the Doris product, which Sarah and her team have evaluated, and you can ask her lots of questions. We think it's an amazing product, but of course we do. But Sarah has her own opinion, I imagine. The second part is the Doris Pro trial. They're two different products. One is Doris, sits in the kitchen. Doris Pro is a portfolio of devices around the home. The Doris Pro trial is just 2 homes at this stage. And we would love the opportunity to work with anyone on this call in deploying any pilots or trials that you deem fit. It's a mature product. It's been in the market well over 18 months, nearly 2 years now. And you can order one tomorrow from Taking Care if you want to. Go on their website. It gets delivered tomorrow morning to your mother or father. It is a pilot to prove it works is less than necessary, but a pilot to understand its benefits is obviously something we can convey, and we can provide case studies and reports on, as well as advocates.
Thank you, Neil. Roman.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the problem of a connector for the different network, just to perhaps explain you how it works outside of UK. We have the same problem using digital telecare equipment, of course, to send information. Most of customers around Europe use only a SIM card inside, and more they go to dual connectivity. You have some of equipment in UK using 2 SIM cards, okay, and you have other with IP and SIM card too. We think that the right idea is to use in backup the internet box that you have in the house. Why? Because as you see, everybody here have an internet connection at home. Okay, so they have a box at home. So in the future, all will pass using the internet box. So you need to have this connection, and you have a backup using a SIM card for our perspective. It's growing this kind of product fast in Europe. It takes like 2 years to arrive because of the problem of infrastructure, technical infrastructure for all the customer, all the calling center, and all the platform to use the VoIP, for example, in our case. So now that this is growing and all the infrastructure is new now, and we are moving from a product using a SIM card to a dual connectivity using SIM card and an internet box. This how it works for the moment in a lot of countries in Europe.
Thank you, Roman. Tom.
I'll just unmute. Thanks again. I just wanted to, I don't want to turn this into a debate about connectivity, because we could have a whole new webinar on connectivity. But just to point out that, yeah, I agree with Roman and also agree with Neil that there is lots of extra connectivity coming in. I think the challenge right now is that there's a kind of question mark over, multiple SIMs doesn't necessarily give you more coverage, because those multiple SIMs could end up back at one single mast on a shared mast basis. So your single point of failure becomes the fact that the connectivity is handled by one mast. So it doesn't really matter how you try to manage the connectivity, because there's always going to be an element of single point of failure. I think we need to just bear that in mind when we're making these procurement decisions. However, there are also relaxations in some of the connectivity that's been delivered. Vodafone, for example, is very active in delivering a thing they call the shared rural network. So there are opportunities now for even communities to take on board elements of connectivity. So I've seen posts about local pubs taking on board cell sites, so they're actually producing cell sites from using the pub as the local connectivity place. In addition to that, we have kind of broadcast Wi-Fi capability with one of our other partners, Semtech, for example, who massive US company, produce routers that allow to deliver wide broadband area connection using Wi-Fi and masking MVNO capability. That's mobile virtual network operators. So connectivity is really not an issue if we can put our brains to it, but I think it's just a case of being mindful that there is a single point of failure somewhere.
Thank you. So the next question comes from Peter Reed Forrester of Yorville. And Peter's question is, which current dispersed alarm or text solution do you believe are truly digital and capable of providing the data we all need? Does Tom?
Yeah, can I take that? None of them is the answer. I think that all of the devices have elements of connectivity, but they don't have. There's no panacea for a solution. How many of them have a true digital capability? Well, I think substantially. There's a lot of activity. We've got Roman on the call here. He's clearly got a digital product using a VoIP and SIP capability. So there are, and Peter, your own product, I know is connected to the Archangel platform, and I know that it's capable of delivering IP-based comms. So there are products out there, but none of them in isolation have a total solution. And that's really where we need to connect all the devices into one space, where we can then start to really maximize the capability of the data that's gathered from all of those sources. So there isn't a panacea out there just now.
Thanks, Tom. Neil, did you want to add to that?
I wholeheartedly agree with Tom. There is no one size fits all. I don't think there ever will be, because of the uniqueness of the market and the demographic we're focusing on. And we all need to integrate seamlessly and work together to provide solutions that meet the needs of those residents. There are products on the market, when pulled together, create more than the sum of their parts. And we need to work together to make sure that that happens in every case.
I think Peter's added a supplementary. He says, I was thinking more about the wider data collection capability via sensors, etc. I think when you talked about your products, Neil, it's very much around that, wasn't it?
Yes, so our sensors are designed in such a way, as my presentation showed, to reduce the total cost of ownership in the management of those sensors, the deployment, the installation, and the ease of use. However, there will be an announcement very soon with a major dispersed alarm manufacturer that are integrating our products, but watch this space.
Tom.
Yeah, sorry. Just to say that sensors are sensors. Again, different types of sensors, different types of technologies, different limitations. So you'll get some sensors delivering using NB-IoT, some using Zigbee, some using LTE, blah, blah, blah. So it's about carefully considering what you require from those sensors and how those sensors' connectivity will deliver the data that you require. And clearly the backhaul for that data is then another key thing. Where does the data sit? Is the data sitting inside a hub? Does the hub then communicate to the internet? How does it communicate to the internet? And so on and so forth. So this is not a straightforward conversation, but it's one where you need, I guess, an agnostic approach to consider that from and I would strongly use I think you mentioned Farpoint. Someone mentioned Farpoint earlier. Aaron, a great organization to work with in terms of consultation for different types of technology, and we would certainly say take some advice. We're obviously a supplier, we're agnostic, but everyone has their supply product to sell, and they will sell it to the best of their ability. I think it's about trying to be informed as best as you can about the limitations of that, as well as the benefits.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I think we're just about coming to the end of today's session. I'd like to thank all the presenters, Sarah, Aaron, Brian, Tom, Roman, Neil, and Emma, for all your input. This has been a really useful and interactive session. I'm really, we can just see from the questions that have come in during the session. The questions on the chat box will be shared with all the presenters. So if you want to get back personally to any of those people who raise questions, that'll be possible as well. So we'll send those out directly after the event. I hope all the delegates who stuck with us throughout this session today have found it interesting. We're getting lots of really positive comments, so thank you very much for that. As I said, we'll be running a number more of these virtual sessions in the next few months, together with our live sessions as well. So as I said, our next one is 28th of May in London. We've got the 1st of October booked for Lancaster, and hopefully we'll have one in Surrey in between those as well. So lots of information coming out as with today. But once again, really big thank you to all the presenters and panelists today for sharing such useful information with us. And hopefully it's been helpful for the organisations who are planning to take their service users safely into a new digital world. Thank you very much. Hope to see you all again soon. Have a good afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Goodbye.